So, welcome everyone. I hope you are perhaps a bit more peaceful than when we started. And I hope that for those of you who are participating in the practice period, that you're able to sort of begin to settle in to a kind of a rhythm for yourself and your practice. It takes a little while sometimes. For those of you who have been on a retreat, a meditation retreat, or a session, you might have had the experience at about, day 2, day 3, when you can really settle in. But wherever you are in your practice, I hope you can find a comfortable tempo. And way to engage in this practice period. Does anyone have any questions at this point?
So, Jeffrey, I have been reviewing the Heart Sutra. Form equals emptiness, emptiness equals form. And I'm looking at the reason why we have forms. We just went through the form of sitting for meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And my thinking is it's an aid to mindfulness and concentration and helps us on our journey.
That would be a good way to put it. Mm-hmm.
So, but then if I go too far and I spend all the time on the form,
Mm-hmm.
then it defeats the purpose of it being there in the first place.
Yes. There is a paradox there.
Yes.
Yes.
You lose the spirit anyway.
Yeah, you lose the spirit. CJ said you lose the spirit of
Right.
the form itself. So it's a tool to be used. If you overuse the tool, it becomes, it's about the tool then, not about the.
Right. Pretty much anything can be an aid to us in waking up, and pretty much anything can become a hindrance to us waking up. So there is a kind of a balance there, especially when we're talking about the forms. And for people who, I don't know, maybe might not be familiar with that term, form is sort of um, the things or the activities that we do. So sitting, the way that we sit in Soto Zen, right, on the ground or on a cushion or on a chair. You know, if we're in a zendo or maybe at home, facing a wall, a blank wall, that is considered a form. Meditating in that asana, that posture, that's a form. Bowing is a form. The way that we bow to our seat and then turn counterclockwise in Zen and bow to the room, bow to the community, and then sit down and face the wall. That is a form. Chanting the Heart Sutra is a form. Any chant is a form. Doing kinhin, the slow meditative walking meditation, that is a form. And there are many others. And the way that I think of them is they are sort of uh, doorways or gates or invitations into a deeper wisdom. And when when we're just beginning, when we're just learning these things, then it's very natural to focus on the form itself, on how to actually do this, how to actually bow, how do we, you know, bow in gasho, or how do we, how is our posture when we sit, that kind of thing. So it's very natural to focus on the form, and there's nothing wrong with that. But once we sort of learn the form and we practice it for a while, if we continue to focus on that, then it can become a hindrance. At some point, hopefully, when we've practiced enough, we can let go and be comfortable in the form once we've learned it. And that's what's meant to happen. So if we were to practice for, a year or two and still be concerned about how my back is and, how my shoulders are and am I upright enough, that then it's become an obstacle. Does that make sense? We haven't been able to incorporate it and then relax into the form.
And also, in the Sangha, the form is also an important method of focusing the Sangha as well, so that we have a common bond.
We have a common understanding.
Yeah.
If you think about sort of where our lineage of Zen came from Japan, there's a very sort of communal awareness. There's a very social awareness in that culture, and being a part of and not being different than is very important in that culture. Not sticking out, not being an individual, which we celebrate here in the United States. That's like the end all and be all, is to be yourself and to be an individual. But this is coming out of a very different cultural psyche and cultural norms. But the forms do help orient us so that we're in harmony together. So Ian, my teacher, if you hear him talk about the forms, he'll often talk about oryoki, which is the form of eating in the Zendo when we eat together. And he loves that form. He loves to practice that form. It's one of his favorites. And when he talks about it, and kinhin is very much like this also, it's really when it goes well and everyone's on the same page, so to speak, it's really like a dance. It's like a dance that people are moving in harmony together, and it's true for kinhin as well, for the walking meditation. That there's a particular kind of awareness that these forms sort of demand of us. So we have to have a situational awareness. We have to kind of be aware of what's going on around us. We have to know something about sort of how to do the form itself, like what happens next, and what do I do with my chopsticks and utensils if we're doing oryoki, and how do I treat my bowls and all of that, and when when it's done in unison, it's beautiful. There's this flow and harmony. And that's part of the teaching of the form, is to get to that sort of level, to get to that comfort with the form, right? And that is true with any form. The idea is to learn it, and so it becomes second nature, and so we can relax, like meditation itself, you know, to be able to focus and relax the mind and maintain that focus and concentration. You know, that's what tends to happen over time. You know, that's one of the unfortunate limitations of Zoom, is that we really don't get to practice many of those forms together. So, but some practice is better than no practice.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a good question. You know, there's often in the beginning a struggle. We struggle with or against these forms as we're learning from them. They can teach us things. They can teach us important things, which is why they've been transmitted for so long. There's a reason that they're around. And the sort of the another part of that is when Buddhism travels or moves into a new culture or a new place, it adapts to the culture, and the forms change. They can change. And that's what we've been encountering in the West, in the United States. How do we relate to these medieval Japanese psyche, the forms that came out of a very different time and place? And sort of one of, you know, we don't talk about it very much, but some of the work of our sangha, of any sangha here, is to find out what works as a form and what might not, what might need to be changed. I was having that conversation with somebody recently. Oh, with Marjorie, who sometimes joins us. So, you know, if you're relatively new and it's still kind of uncomfortable, that's okay. That's okay. It's not out of the ordinary for that to be the case. So if sitting, you know, in that posture is still a little uncomfortable, just stay with it. Stay with it. An important part of, you know, what these forms or this practice can teach us is how to work with difficulty or pain or discomfort or when our expectations don't go as we planned. And the teaching is to keep going, keep trying, keep making an effort.
What forms would we use to explore those causes of our suffering? And
Any of them, any and all of them, actually. I'll tell you a story. I was sitting, it was when I was a resident at Jikoji, and I was sitting in Sesshin, and we were eating oryoki, and I was still learning how to how to eat. And for the for the sake of the story, oryoki means just enough. So it's eating just enough, right? That's the background of the story. So we were eating, and um, if you've experienced, you know, they come by and you and the server serves you the food, and you indicate whether it's enough, or you know whether you want some more, or you know you tell them when to stop, and that's part of the form. And then you all eat, and everyone eats, and then they come around a second time, you know, if you want more. And I, for whatever reason, was hungry, and so I had them serve me more, right? But I wasn't paying attention, and they were serving me, and I didn't tell them to stop. So they filled my bowl up with this. It was delicious food, but it was a tofu dish with peanut butter, kind of a sauce, and and you don't have a water, you don't have a drink. So anyway, the form is whatever you're served, you eat. So I had to eat this really quick, and everyone was finished, and I was still trying to eat this food, you know, and it was a very uncomfortable but great lesson for me to one, pay attention to to what's going on, and two, to look at my appetite and my desire and my want for more. You know, I could have I could have gotten by with one serving. I would have lasted to the next meal. You know, so it was a wonderful, uh, albeit very uncomfortable. People were, you know, kind of snickering, and you know, it was a bit of a spectacle. So um, so it was unpleasant for my ego for sure. But it was a great learning experience. It was fantastic, you know. So there's one of countless examples of how we can learn from a form, you know. Mostly we learn when we make mistakes. That's when we learn in life, or in Zen, or in the Zendo, or outside of the Zendo, on the cushion, off the cushion. That's often when we have the best opportunity to learn, right? When we make a mistake or something unanticipated happens. So does that get at your question, Nina? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Anyone else have any questions at this point?
Hi, I have a question.
Hi, Joe. Yes.
Sure. Is there a particular form that focus? It might not be a particular form. It might be just ubiquitous. But is there a form about passion or being compassionate for yourself and others?
Mm, yes. Yes, there are. A couple of different ones. Um, the one that comes most immediately to mind is the one that we practice here, which is metta, or
Hmm.
loving kindness meditation. So we typically practice metta together. It's a guided meditation, and we do that the last Wednesday of the month. So, for example, next week, we'll do a guided metta meditation. And that is a wonderful meditation to work with that, because there are 4 intentions in metta, and we practice first for ourselves, and then if and to the degree that we're able, then we include sort of more and more beings, so kind of wider, ever widening circles. So we practice for ourselves, and then we practice for our loved ones, and then we practice for people who are neutral, and then we practice for our enemies, and then we practice for all beings without discernment. But we begin with ourselves because we have to begin there. We have to begin there. If we can't experience these intentions with ourselves, then there's very little chance of authentically experiencing them with somebody else. And the 4 intentions are, may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I be peaceful. So metta is a wonderful meditation practice form, if you will, to work with self-compassion. There is compassion meditation. There is one specific to compassion. And again, we start with ourselves and we work our way outwards. There's a logic, a wisdom to that. There is forgiveness meditation, which is a very powerful meditation that we usually do at least once a year or sometimes twice a year together. That's a very important one for self-compassion, is learning how to forgive ourselves and forgive others. So I would say those 3 forms of meditation would be very good, very helpful, very effective for compassion and self-compassion in particular.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking.
I have a question, and maybe it's more nomenclature than and words than it is about the forms themselves. But I was wondering if like the paramitas and the precepts, they're not really forms, but they are sort of a formal a formalization of an ethics. So are those ethics a form, or would you just consider are they outside of that? Like I said, it's some of it's words, but also some of it's getting my head around it.
Sure. That's a great question, Scott. Thank you for asking. I would say that they are forms. I would call them forms, particularly receiving the precepts. Whether we're receiving the precepts in a lay ordination or a priest ordination or in some other way. That's there's a very ritualized way of doing that. So that's most definitely would kind of fit in that form as a form, because there is a certain way that we do that. The paramitas are a little bit different. They sort of they go beyond and they permeate everything. You know, the Taizan Mark would call them values. You know, they're values. The paramitas. The paramitas, if you're not aware, there are 10 of them typically. They're called the perfections. So they're like the perfections of wisdom, of bodhicitta, of awakened mind, awakened heart mind. And they are intentions, they're values, and they really permeate pretty much all of what we try to do skillfully. And so I suppose you could consider them forms. They're certainly inherent in many of the forms. But whether I would say each one is a form, I don't know. I think, like you were indicating, it might be a nomenclature sort of issue, not particularly important. Important to know them, important to practice them. So, thank you for that question.
So now we come full circle and emptiness. So how does the forms equal emptiness as per the Heart Sutra?
Uh-huh. So, do you have the Heart Sutra in front of you, Ken?
Yes, I do.
Do you want to read that part for
Okay.
everyone?
Yep, just hold on. Turn the light on.
So while we're considering the light on, the Heart Sutra is probably the most often chanted sutra in Zen temples. It's chanted all over the world many times a day, usually in the morning and the evening. It's also chanted at important ceremonies. When somebody dies, the Heart Sutra is chanted. It is sort of one of the quintessential dharmas of Zen. It's a central reference point for Zen.
So I might as well start at the beginning. The noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva.
Thank you. While practicing the deep practice of prajna paramitra, looked upon the 5 skandhas and seeing they were empty of self-existence, said, "Here, Sariputra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is not separate from form, form is not separate from emptiness. Whatever is form is emptiness, whatever is emptiness is form." And then it goes on to say, "Therefore, Sariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no sensation, no perception, no memory and no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body and no mind, no shape, no sound, no smell, no taste, no feeling and no thought, no element of perception from I to conceptual consciousness, no causal link from ignorance to old age and death, or end of causal link from or ignorance to old age and death."
So, what is your take about the relationship between form and emptiness?
I guess that goes back to, if the form has no meaning.
That's a little bit different.
Well, I'm looking at the intent behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is what I've been struggling with ever since I've read it. It's like, what's the connection there?
Mm.
And there's something that's, I guess you could say, not logical, which is kind of Zen in itself, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's a matter of thinking about it. How do I not wrap my mind around it, but how do I Not think about it, but think about it.
Mhm.
How do I equate these two things together?
Mhm.
It's
It's a fantastic question, wonderful big question. So I doubt we'll answer it tonight, but um, one thing I might say is that it does help to read the sutra, to become familiar with it. That's why it's chanted every day in a Zen temple. We chant it in the morning as part of the morning service, and that is to keep the words in mind, kind of going back here, you know. And it can help to think about it explicitly as you are. And as is often the case with Zen, there's more to it than that. Because ultimately, it points to something else. It points to an experience. Um, so I like to refer things back to meditation because we all meditate and we all have that common experience, that common potential for overlapping experience. And so in meditation, maybe you've had the experience of becoming absorbed, just really in the meditation. And, uh, you know, there are distractions, whatever, sounds or smells or all of those things that they talk about in the Heart Sutra, all the list, sight, sound, smell, maybe there's a distraction, right? But it's not knocking you off your seat. It's not bothering you. You're still focused. And maybe you have a sense of spaciousness, or maybe you feel permeable. Maybe you feel like things are just coming and going. And your regular sense of self kind of recedes, right? The chatter, the committee is quiet for a bit. There's a moment of peace and serenity, maybe joy. But not much is going on. The thoughts have subsided. The feelings have subsided. The sensations have subsided. It's all receded. All of those forms are gone. And now it's emptiness. And what we have the opportunity to recognize is that every form comes out of, is a part of, is connected to that emptiness that's always already there. And then the band starts to play again, right? Then the thoughts come and the distractions and all the stuff. We're back. The dog barks, the cat, climbs in our lap, whatever. And we're back. And here are the forms again, right? But that emptiness is still there. And the forms arise out of it. And they're not separate. They're not separate.
I say something.
Yes, please, Rhoda.
Taizan Mark talked about everything being one tissue.
Yeah.
David Hinton's book that I have not gone through the whole thing, Existence, he really felt that back and forth that it was all one thing. So form and emptiness, they're the same. And like the chair or the table is not really anything, really. I mean, you think it is, you name it. I mean, we name ourselves, but are we really something separate? That's what I got from that. I mean, I have to keep reading that book.
So when we name something, then we've created a thing, and because we've created a thing, now there's an us, right? Or if there's an us, then we create things. I mean, that it goes together. So that's why in Zen we try to get beyond that. Try to get beyond language, try to get beyond thinking, right? As Dogen says, let body and mind drop off. So it's an experience. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. It's really an experience that the Heart Sutra is pointing at, saying, hey, pay attention to that. And this example from meditation, it's very common. All of us have probably had it at some point already. So.
And then you can almost experience a sense of impermanence.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about all the work we did with death. And it's just another step to try to begin accepting that we are not impermanent, that we are.
We are. Yes, we are. Everything is. All contingent phenomenon are impermanent. Everything that's made up of the aggregates is impermanent, ourselves included. So we talked about during the practice period in Wild Country Zen of an ocean and waves. And we're just a wave in the ocean. And we're away for a while, and then we're the ocean again. And that ocean is emptiness. Everythingness. Koben called it everythingness, not emptiness. It's the other side of the coin. It's the same thing. So form and emptiness are the yin and the yang, the dark and the light, with the opposite right in the middle of each. But it's more than just some, I guess what I'm trying to convey to you is it's more than some esoteric teaching. It's a simple, accessible experience that it's pointing to. Everyone is absolutely capable of understanding that. It's not some distant thing.
On nomenclature, I think there's also that the English word for forms and this element of the skandhas, form, are the same, but I'm sure that that in that we're looking at two different things. I mean, they're connected, obviously, but this is the idea of form and sensation and consciousness and that sort of thing, not necessarily the forms. It's not limited to that. To me, it's in the skandhas. It's beyond that. But all those things put together, the form, like you're saying, it's emptiness. It's the wave and the ocean, and it's everythingness. It's the wave and it's the ocean. I love that. I love the way that you put that together. Thank you.
Yeah, skandhas means heaps or aggregates, is typically how it's translated. That all contingent phenomenon are comprised of these aggregates. And if you take one away, it no longer exists. So if you take one of those 5 aggregates away, we're no longer a living human. And we're just receding back to where we came from, our original face, as we say in Zen. The koan is, what was your original face before you were born? And that's meant, as koans are, to trip us up mentally, intellectually. They're not meant to be understood intellectually. They're meant to confound thinking and trip thinking up so that we understand its limitation. We understand that what's important is really beyond thinking. Well, thank you all for the wonderful questions and discussion tonight. Very fruitful. I wish you well, continuing on in your practice. And yeah, I hope you have a good week. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, next week is the last Wednesday of the month, so we will practice metta together, loving kindness meditation, or often called universal friendliness meditation. We'll do that sparsely guided meditation next week. So have a good week. May your practice go well, and I'll look forward to seeing you all then.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.